Hello guys, welcome to the podcast Scientist Secret Stories. My name is Ali Madani. Today I have a guest. He's a PhD student from a university in Italy, and his PhD project is a cooperation between his university and a university in Germany. Because of the anonymous strategy, I don't say his real name. Actually, we call him Ben. How are you, Ben?
I'm quite good, Ali. Thank you for having me on this quite interesting and new idea of the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the interview. We jump directly to the questions. Actually, I said you are a PhD student from Italy, but you are not originally from Italy. You are from a country in Middle East, like me. And why Italy?
Why Italy? That's a question that can be developed for many aspects. Basically, my background is concerned in engineering. So I'm mainly into civil and environmental engineering. And from a scientific point of view, Italy has a very good stand and very good research field concerning the environment and landscape and the whole environmental and civil engineering. So that was one aspect that I considered during my application. Obviously, the second aspect was also the Mediterranean climate that is similar to my country of origin. So that also kind of increased the chances of Italy. And the third and last point was the availability of easy scholarships to start my studies there. So basically, I did my master's before starting the PhD, and getting the acceptance and starting the master's there using a scholarship was quite an easy process to make, and it was very simple from that. So basically,
Nice.
there are three reasons.
Actually, I'm immigrant too, from Iran. But why do you actually leave the whole family from your country, Middle East, and move to the other country and do your study and PhD or something like that? What is the reason?
Oh, why do you leave the family? I mean, I didn't leave the family. I left the country,
Yeah.
and actually, I didn't leave the country, but the country left me. That's a very philosophical
Yeah.
point of view, and usually, maybe you understand from your own experience. You look for more opportunities, but not just financially or life-wise or financial point of view. You look for opportunities as experiences, as ways of living. So it's also quite nice to have the opportunity to experience different cultures, different lifestyle, even politics. So it's a different way of living, let's call it. That's also an answer for that. I wouldn't say I left my family. Let's say I physically distanced myself from them. So I try to visit them as often as possible.
Possible.
But yeah, I would say since 6 years, I went back to my country 6 times, so at least one time per year. And basically, the reasons to leave your country or your family is motivated by education. So it's also quite good to have a PhD from Europe or from USA or from Canada. So from the big countries, it helps you a lot, especially in the case when you want to return to your country after, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. It's like a good way to turn back. And secondly, it's also motivated by economical reasons, as we all know. So mainly the opportunities are slightly better, I would say, in Italy, slightly, with a focus on slightly. And thirdly, and most importantly, I think it's more the experience aspect of it. Even though usually you don't think about it, mainly the people would look at the position, so it's either a job or a PhD, and say, oh, okay, I will go for a job or a PhD and I will be well paid. But with time, you realize that it's more about the experiences and the people you meet and the situations that happen with you negatively and positively. So it's not just the good experiences. So the whole thing is you discover it. I discovered it later that it's more motivated by experiences.
Yeah, I can understand it because you leave something and you get something and you have to look at it and see if there is a balance or something like that. And if it's the balance for you, it's a positive and it's good to do. If not, it's better to stay near the family because for some people it's better to stay near the family, not immigrate to the other countries
Exactly.
because for them it's the balance is in the other side. Yeah, I can understand it because for me it's like that. The last 9 years it's a different experience, and the amount of experience is huge. And maybe after 30 years in Iran, I couldn't have this experience too. It means in a
Exactly.
short time, it's the amount of experience, and it's very interesting, and for me personally. And how was getting the visa and the extension of your visa in Italy actually, from your country to the?
Okay, from a bureaucratic perspective, it's a bit complicated in Italy. Getting the original visa, so the initial visa when I traveled, it was somehow easy. So it took me 2 months, especially for students. So they don't really make any complications for that. The problem is when you reach and you have to make your actual permit of stay and the whole bureaucratic document. It was a very complicated process, especially at the beginning, because there is some sort of a loophole in the system. I give you an example. To make a bank account in Italy, you need to have a phone number, an Italian phone number. But then to make an Italian phone number, you have to have a registered bank account. So I remember, yeah, it's a loophole. So I remember the first days when I had to open a bank account. I went to the bank, and next to it there was the phone shop. So I spent, I think, 2 hours jumping, exiting the bank, entering the phone shop, then exiting the phone shop, then entering the bank. So it was like a nice trip between the bank and the phone shop. So yeah, it's quite bureaucratic. For the permit of the stay or the official documents, there is a big lack of personnel in the immigration offices. Hence, the documents are always delayed. And what happens in that case? You get, when you apply for the renewal or for your document, you get some sort of a receipt that testifies that you are a student here. But this receipt allows you only to travel between Italy and your country of origin. What does that mean? That means that if you need to go to a conference in France or in Germany, it's a bit complicated, so you cannot do it. You have to apply for a visa there. And for science and PhD students, researchers, professors who are coming from abroad and are interested in doing some networking, going to conferences, exchanging ideas, cooperation project, that's a bit complicated. So that's a point I'm advocating a lot for, to actually help, especially students and PhD students, international students, to make this visa or permit of stay or the whole bureaucratic process to make it simple.
Yeah, I can understand because you are still in Europe, but you can't travel for the conference or something like that. It takes more time, uh, and you as a scientist, you want to actually do your research, but you have to
Yeah,
invest too much time for the other things. If you don't do that, and you have problem with your science itself,
yeah.
but you have less time at the end for your research itself too, and it's very challenging to plan everything together, and it's a good
It's
jump.
quite,
Yeah,
I mean, it's quite, it feels like getting your permit is like getting a PhD by itself. It feels like a prize. You know, when you get it, it feels like you made an achievement. It should not be like this.
yeah.
It should be a right, not a prize that you get.
It's a good jump to the next question. Now you're
Yeah.
actually a PhD student. You're almost at the end of your PhD student. And
Mhm.
my question is, why actually PhD? What was your motivation to start as a scientist researcher?
Mm. Um, so as I said, I did my master's here before.
Yeah.
I tried to work, and I found the work a bit stagnant in the sense that I couldn't see a future in the field that I was working in the offices I was working in. And the engineering market in general is still quite closed to some international workers or engineers. And I had the interest, to be honest. I was thinking a bit about to do a PhD, but then I said, no, it's too cumbersome. It needs time, you know. But then one professor called me, and the professor suggested a project, which was interesting for me. So it was quite an applied project in 4 countries and many different case studies and 4 different countries from 4 different locations. So also it was nice to see the different languages, ways of thinking. So I said, yeah, it could be nice. But the compromise was to have a lower salary. So the PhDs in Italy are not so well paid. I mean, it's not even called payment. It's called like a scholarship. So you are fiscally or officially, you are not considered a worker. You are still considered a student with a scholarship. So that was the part of it. So let's say the main motivation was the topic of my PhD, which is quite a multidisciplinary topic. So it's not a very specific topic that focuses or addresses one point, but it takes different points from different fields of studies, from engineering, from social sciences, from economy, from politics, and it tries to connect them. So that was also quite interesting for me, but it is also challenging. So yeah, that was the main motivation. I could say it
It
was
means
the
you,
topic.
yeah. It means you like to discover the relationship between different parameters or something like that, and it's very
Yes,
interesting to understand and discover these relationships.
yes, especially their application in
Hmm.
real life.
Aye.
That was also.
And okay, all right. And how do you define actually a real science in your opinion? You started as a PhD, you liked your topic and
Mm.
discovering these relationships. How you define actually a real science in your opinion?
Uh, I think that there is no real and fake science. I mean, science in general is based on observations, and we as humans, we are all observers. And in that sense, in that way of thinking, we are all scientists. If you want to extend it, a real scientist would be the one that chooses to develop further his observations and decide to say, okay, I have these observations, I have these interests, I like to look at butterflies, I like to look at shrimps in some sea. So, for example, someone goes to a sea and notices there is under the rocks some kind of an animal or a shrimp, and they decide, okay, I want to develop this. I want to observe more, do some studies, analyze, do observations, count. That would be the real science. Uh, so that is basically my definition of real science. When it becomes more of a administrative work, in the sense that, oh, okay, I do a PhD, I write paper, I publish, or I don't know, because now there is some sort of a mismatch between what you actually want to see or what you actually want to produce and what you are giving as an output. So, for example, if I want to study the shrimps in some region, giving the shrimps as an example, you are quite pushed by the science to produce facts. So we were having this discussion between effectiveness and efficiency, and this is also quite related. I don't think a real scientist should be effective. A real science, a real scientist should be efficient in the sense that
It
you
should
can
be
take your time.
effective. It should be effective.
Effective, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, not efficient. Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, it should be effective
effective.
to give the actual thing you wanted to study, not to produce stuff like journals or articles or
Yeah.
That was my small take on
Yeah,
research.
the quality of your question and finding the answer of this question is more important. To only
Yeah,
generate questions and to answer it, and but nobody needs
yeah,
this answer. Maybe it's better
mm,
to invest a little bit more time to find a
mm,
actually better answer to generate more knowledge. Maybe it's useful for right now, or maybe it's useful for later.
mm,
But one part of the science work is actually generating knowledge. But now it's maybe
exactly.
not useful for implement it in the industry or something like that. But for the future, you have to generate knowledge, and after it, and it's developed, and and go to the next stage. And you speak a little bit about this effective and efficient and
Hmm.
these challenges. But still, I ask this problem or this question: what bothers you actually in science the most? Not extending the visa or something like this, but it's not related to science. It's actually extended visa is
Mm,
another problem. As a
mhm.
migrant, you have. But what bothers you in science itself? Problems, challenge, what you see as a problem, it could be solved or it's better to solve.
What bothers me the most is the
Mm.
ego issues. I mean, I had the luck to talk to many professors and to be in conferences, even in collaborations between many professors. And I remember the people I met that I uh, like them the most, or I have the most respect for them, and that they taught me the most were the most humble people. So, for example, one professor was very kind enough to discuss ideas in a very relaxed, normal way. So it's like we are sitting now, we take a coffee, and then we discuss the idea. And she was a very important professor, and this opened many doors for me. Just the fact that we discussed. On the other hand, other professors, I wouldn't say egoistic, but maybe they are too deep into what they are doing and too consumed by their research. They lose the way of communication. So they do not communicate well, or maybe they present ideas that if you present them an idea, they do not accept it quickly because it might challenge their way of thinking or their way of looking at things. And usually, whenever you do this, especially in academia, the power dynamic enters. The first argument that is made: I'm a professor for 20 years. You're just a PhD student. Just shut up and listen.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yes,
this power dynamic is a very big problem because I see many PhD colleagues of mine and also me, uh, but to a lesser extent, they get a bit discouraged by this, and they end up not having their own view on science or on their research, but they adopt the same views as their professor, which is fine because at the end you belong to a professor, to a team. But somehow it's nice to be also problematic or to challenge the ideas that your professor tells you, and not just follow an idea because someone who has 30 years of experience says it. It will most probably be true, or it will most probably be valid, but it's also good to have the critical personal thinking. Sometimes the naivety. So when someone from outside, it's not naivety, but they call it naivety. So from when someone from outside looks at things for the first time, they might have a better way of looking at it with respect to someone who was 20 years and looking at the same things and having the same way of thinking.
You mean
So
sometimes after many years you are in a certain routine and
yeah,
you don't see the other ways because you are
yeah,
so deeply inside of it and you can't understand it. But
yeah,
if a new person come and he
yeah,
or she doesn't know anything, but it has a easy, simple way to analyze it. Oh, okay, it doesn't make sense actually. The other ways is actually
yeah,
better, easier, or more efficient and effective or something like that. But the others, again, I
yeah,
have 20 years experience and you have to first learn.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not saying that the 20 years of experience are not valid
Valid.
or are
This is
not.
valid.
Uh,
But yeah, I understand what
yeah,
you
I'm
mean because
saying
yeah.
it's like an inspiration that you might have. It's like you have a 6-year-old baby that asks you about stuff, and you have to talk to them. Just communication, I would say, is the
Most
main
challenge.
problem in research. Yeah.
It's for me interesting this topic what you said, because it's normal if we learn more and more, we have more perspective to see and analyze if some person say anything, but this is challenging to stay still hungry to listen to the others and don't connect our deep knowledge with it, because if we connect our deep knowledge and we see the disadvantages and that it doesn't work, that but how, for example, you said it as a problem and challenge, how could I or the other scientists solve or reduce these challenges? Because after 20 years experience or 30 years experience, maybe I do the same or I see the same. I don't want to be egoist or something like that, or look like such person. But after a certain time, I can't see the world like for 20 years ago. I have 20 years experience, and it is a little bit different in my brain. The relationships between my nerve system is more complicated than before. How can I control myself or still stay?
Yeah, I think doing many informal events is quite helpful from what I saw. What does it mean? Going for coffees or going for a dinner or even drinking. Drunk professors are quite interesting. They speak very nice thoughts. They are less controlled, so they have many interesting thoughts. But yeah, I'm not saying this to drink, but maybe doing more informal, relaxed event in the sense that we see each other as a human. I don't see you as a professor and you see me as a PhD student. So it's like we go back to the original question of the real science. So at the end, the observer is a human, and it's like we are two humans discussing the ways of science, and that would really help.
I can imagine it. Actually, what you say is, if we do events or something like that, a little bit more formal, and you position it as a professor, and in this position you are indirectly, actually, I am professor, I have to say I know, I position it. But if I'm a personal, I'm a little bit informal in connection with the others, and I open a little bit more because I don't need to say I'm in this position. I reduce indirectly my personality a little bit more informal, and it's open more readiness to listen to the others. Don't say, hey, I have to be a professor, I have to do this conference, and I have to show my research is perfect. I have to sell it at the other level.
Yes, exactly. And
interesting.
Yeah, so I would say it's quite good to have these informal formal
events
and
meetings. And I said your PhD is a cooperation between your university in Italy and a university in a university or at a university in Germany. How is the cooperation culture between these two universities? Because it's still Europe, but it's still two countries, different cultures, and Germany and Italy have different cultures. How is the culture of your team?
I mean, interestingly enough, it was not so much different. And between my two teams, the two universities were quite following more or less same rules regarding bureaucratic things, like doing documents, paper, registrations for your PhD. So
both it takes long.
Yeah, exactly. I said they are the same. I didn't say they are both good. So I had the chance to meet, let's call it a German team, a Mannschaft, a German team, and the Italian team. I wouldn't compare the two teams, so they are quite different, especially not from a personality, but from a position point of view, from a work point of view. So my Italian team is hired based on short research contracts. So either you have a researcher that has a contract for 1 year or for 3 years, and you have less fixed people in the department. Compared to the German team, you have, of course, you still have these short-term research contracts, but you also have a longer contract people. So some people are fixed there, they are more relaxed, so more relaxed from a contractual point of view. So I had like two people to work with. Some people had their families, they were doing their PhDs, quite relaxed, so they were not so stressed with the time. And that was more in Germany that I saw these cases. Instead, in Italy, it's still more of a student level. Yeah, like you see many PhD students, they are strictly given 3 years. Even the research contracts are 1 year, so it feels more temporary. The team in the university in Germany is quite also nice. So they were quite open to have a person with my background or with my history. So I didn't even notice any issue with that, even though some people might have like each others, or they think that okay, maybe that if you go there it will be more close. But I didn't notice anything of that. They were very welcoming, very helpful. Culture-wise, the difference is it takes more time maybe to do such informal events that we previously talked about that could help research. That is mainly the big difference, but that's fine because eventually we may manage to make lots of informal events, lunches, dinners, going out, discussing science, obviously, and exchanging ideas. And that was nice. That was nice to see um, how they perceive their scientific life. Because I saw them. Sorry. Because I saw the German team more into their a very specific thing, a very specific topic of science. Instead, my team here is more general, so they know a bit about everything.
What's the reason, or what could be a reason? This general and deep is the system or the mindset of your professor, or is it the system? It's a little bit.
I think it's the system because in Italy still you have to maybe do many projects, manage many projects. So you have to address a project that needs an expertise A, but then maybe you would also want to work on another project that has an expertise B. So it's also good to have this multidisciplinarity.
This general view to manage everything together. All right. This means the system push you in this direction. The system in Germany push the scientists in other direction. Or for example, with these events and meetings, you said to connect scientists together to build a stronger personal relationship, find the same language together. And I don't know, I don't say Italy or German or English language, even language of the science. To work together better as a corporation, because at the end, as a corporation project is successful if the personal relationship is strong enough, and otherwise it's more challenging. Yeah. And you said about your salary because of the payment, and was it enough for your life, or it was still challenging?
No, it was
you
not
said
enough.
How do you still live, actually? How do you manage it?
I do podcasts and they send me money from podcasts. So that's one way of making money.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean you have to balance. So the salary in Italy that you get, I would say it's at least 50% for the rent. That's a big problem here, and that's why also many 50 at least. So that's why many students opt not to do a PhD because the rent is high, or they do a PhD and they still live with their parents, they have their family here. So at least that's. But in my case, I'm paying at least 50% for my rent to live in a decent place, not in my own apartment. So I'm having a rent that's also high. Yeah, 50% rent. I would say 30% for food, and in case you have other necessities, you have to pay them. And 20% is for leisure and emergency. So, for example, in case you have to do I don't know, a medical test, that will cost at least 200 euros. It's a problem. So at the beginning, at the first year, it was a problem. I couldn't even get sick, so I had to manage it.
Yeah, it's still challenging. I can imagine it.
Yeah.
And you're actually at the end of your PhD.
Yeah.
And how do you feel in science or in research right now? Would you do it again? Because after a few years, now you have more experience. You have another perspective than for a few years ago. And would you do it actually again? What's your feeling actually? First, what's your feeling, and then
Never ask a PhD student when he finishes his PhD, what do you feel? Because after, when they are finishing, they cannot feel anything. They are like zombies. Yeah, I would do it again, even though I had many negative thoughts about it when I was doing it, especially the first year. It felt a bit, it felt like a waste of time, to be honest, especially the first year. Like you don't know what to do, where to start. I would do it again, focusing more on defined objectives of the PhD. So it's quite important, even if for example, if you have a call for a PhD, so if the university advertises a PhD call, and you have to write a proposal for your PhD, I would advise quite much to well define the proposal. So, because in some cases the proposal might be just 10 pages or 5 pages, that is very general and you would get accepted. But I think it's quite important for the proposal. So the year that I took at the beginning, reading papers and thinking, what should I do? And I'm lost and blah, blah, blah. I would advise to take it without doing a PhD to write your proposal. And after you have this 1 year and thinking, you write a proposal, then you would start your PhD. So I would do it in that way instead of just writing a generic proposal and then start. That's the only way. Maybe I would.
In the first interview, I interviewed with a German scientist, and he spoke about the imposter syndrome for the first year, that you don't feel strong enough. And he said you feel in the first year it's a little bit, if you are fake, you don't know more like others, the other know more a little bit, you are lost in system, you have to find it. And the first year is finding your role in this new position, and to understand how the system works, what they have to do, and everything, the direction, and understand the system to have a better decision.
Yeah, but the imposter syndrome, I mean, you will still have it eventually. I mean, whichever stage you will have it, even if you are a 25-year-old professor. What I don't agree with in the imposter syndrome, when people use it as a justification for not developing themselves or not taking responsibility for their mistake, because I'm noticing this a lot. So especially with some new PhDs that they are reading some papers, or they are trying to develop their project and say, I'm having imposter syndrome, I don't know what I'll do, I'm stuck, which is fine. It's fine to have these thoughts, but I get the feeling that when they say this, the fact that they are saying this is when they are saying, I have imposter syndrome, so I don't have to develop myself. The most important thing is, if you feel you are having an imposter syndrome, or if you are thinking about it, don't use it as a way to justify your failures or your shortcomings in science. You should use it as a way to push you to read more papers, to know more things. So it would be also quite a good motivation if you think about it. That's why maybe you wouldn't call it the imposter syndrome. Maybe you would call it the baby syndrome, the baby that doesn't know anything and is discovering. That's my only take on imposter syndrome, that somehow it gives a negative connotation for research, but it's called research. So it's normal that you don't know things. It's like you are saying, I am making a cake. I know that the cake is not made yet, so I feel an imposter. I don't feel I'm a good chef. I don't feel I'm a
Then
good cook.
you don't start it.
Yeah, so maybe it's called the early research syndrome, because you are learning, you are discovering. But imposter is like you reach somewhere and you are claiming that you know, but you don't know. I don't think no one claims that they know everything. So we are researchers. That's my only.
You mean don't use this or don't make these words so big that you can't handle it. Actually, it's
Yeah.
good to analyze your situation, your
Yeah.
feeling, but it doesn't mean to stay passive. Actually,
No.
it's good to analyze, but stay handle
Yeah.
for this situation.
Yeah.
Don't say it's normal and stay there.
Because this might lose you time. Okay, when does the imposter syndrome end? If you start in 2024, it will end the first year, 2025, or it will end 2026. So
6.
It's if you start thinking about it and not working on it, it will
Stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you stay in this system. Okay. It's a nice point of view to understand it, analyze it, and handle it. Don't say it's normal. I don't need to handle it. Actually, find a solution to improve this the challenges. And you're, as I said, at the end of your PhD. And in which direction do you want to go after your PhD? Yet right now,
coffee shop, bar.
Coffee shop. Yeah. Do you have any possibility to open?
I mean, I'm overqualified for a barista job, but I'm trying to write my own projects. The nice thing about Germany is that they are quite helpful for early career scientists. So they provide many opportunities and many funds if you have a good idea. That's what I like also there in the research field in Germany. If you have a good idea, even if you are young, even if you are not a senior professor, there are ways to fund it. So that's one thing I'm working on to fund an idea I have. It will be, of course, in collaboration with the university, but it's like you are your own boss between brackets, quote unquote. Doing a postdoc is not in my current plans, so I will be having a research contract for 1 year, a very flexible research contract, which will help me to decide what I will do for the future. So the main idea.
Try for this project. What you said to find the solution, if it's possible or not, and still try it. Try for it.
But the main idea is to stay in the research, not in academia. So staying in the research field in a more private way. That's my main.
Or we can say stay in learning.
Yes.
Stay in learning.
Yeah, learning while making a good living.
Yeah. It's very fine, and I like actually. I love learning. Without learning, it's the life. For me, it's difficult.
Yes.
I need it. My nerve system. It takes time. It takes energy, but for me, it's the same. It makes me happy to learn and to understand the relationship between the parameters or something like that. Okay, this one. We are actually at the end of our interview, and now you have the last word to those who are in science right now or want to go in science. What would you like to say to them?
Just
to make a better decision or improve it. Just do it.
No, for the policymakers in science.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so you have to know that there are the policymakers, then there are the scientists. That's the main thing. So these are two different kinds of people.
Different mindsets, different positions.
Yeah. So the problem is that policymakers mainly are not scientists. And scientists do not like to do policymaker because also in science you have the problem of dissemination, of taking the actual responsibility of the results that you publish and say, okay, these results should be applied on a national level or on this level. So that's the main point, the dissemination of the work. And my main message to both of them is guys relax a bit, talk to each other, pay the scientists more, and for the scientists, be more flexible, be more easygoing in your research. So we are all living on one planet at the end. And for the early research scientists that they want to do a PhD or they want to, yeah, I would advise them to do it in a very don't stress yourself for financial reasons. So really, if you cannot finance yourself, don't start it. So make sure at least you have the economic stability, yeah, and then do a PhD. So I think that was my main problem the first year. If do it, it's a nice way to also get to know different ways of thinking, different ways of exploring things, but don't do it just for the sake of doing it. If you don't like your topic, if you are not, I don't want to say passionate, I think passionate is a big word, but if you at least don't like it, so you should think that, okay, can I think about this topic while I shower, while I'm in the toilet, while I'm cooking, so you should, while I'm talking in a podcast. So so now I'm doing a podcast. I'm thinking, what will I do after the podcast? So if you are willing to do this, yeah, do it. If you don't have a big passion about it or a big interest and you are doing it just for the title or for the position, yeah, don't do it. It's better to go and do other things.
It doesn't make you more happy or happier.
Yeah.
Only a title or something. Because
Yeah.
at the beginning it's an energy high. I reach it, but after it actually doesn't make sense because you don't have this internal interest.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for the interview and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ali. Bye bye.
Thank you.